evening, everybody, and welcome to Everything Vaguely Paranormal. I'm Shelley Pruitt, and these are my partners in the paranormal, Mr. Blake Smith and Mr. Ryan Roberts. Hey, guys, how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Excited for tonight.
I'm good. I saw a professional wrestler, and I was like, hell yeah, professional wrestling and true crime? All right. Because
So I'm going to tell you right now,
for people who don't know,
go ahead, Ryan.
I'm saying for people who don't know, I am a massive pro wrestling fan. I'm even wearing a wrestling shirt right now, CM Punk. So, so I came dressed for the occasion.
I want to be like, yeah, but I don't know the right hand signal.
I don't know the right hand signal. It's probably best so we don't accidentally drop gang signs and get kicked off.
Too sweet.
Yeah. But whenever I found this one, it kind of rang a bell to me because at one point I lived in Las Vegas, and I am sure that at some point I probably ran across Buffalo Jim. And where I found it, I knew that it had a pro wrestler, which I knew Ryan loved, and it had true crime, which I know all three of us are fascinated with.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And there's potentially even a little ghost story in this.
Oh.
So, yeah, there's one little mention of a ghost. Let's not get too. So I cannot wait to tell you tonight the story of Buffalo Jim Barrier. So you guys had never heard this story, right?
No.
I have never. No.
Perfect. So we are going to jump right in. So Buffalo Jim Barrier, he was born James Christopher Barrier on March 22nd of 1953. And he grew up in Cleveland, Ohio. And he dropped out of the school whenever he was in 5th grade. At the age of 15, his brother got him a job at a gas station, doing things like cleaning up and helping to change the oil in cars. And Jim took to it. He had a talent for it. He loved the cars and he loved working on them. And he learned really quickly. And by the age of 16, he was actually changing things like transmissions and rebuilding engines. He learned that fast.
He was a prodigy.
He was fantastic at it. But you see, money was really tight for Jim. And oftentimes he would sleep on the floor of the gas station at night, get up at all hours, and just work. But at 18, he bought a van. And he packed up his things and he moved to Las Vegas, Nevada in 1971. Now, Las Vegas was not a random destination for Jim because at the age of 9, he had visited the city and he was so enchanted with the lights and the energy and the hustle and the bustle that he decided that someday he would return there. And at the age of 18, he was driving towards the bright glow of Sin City. And as a motivated young man, the world was completely open to him. His fate and his fortune all were in his hands. Now, we all know that since its inception, Las Vegas is a city that can make you wealthy beyond your wildest dreams. But it always comes with a cost.
Not my ass. I mean, damn, my ass. Every time I go, that's why I quit going, because every time I go, I'm broke as shit by the time I come back.
I was going to say, shit, just ask Bugsy Siegel. He knows all about that.
Yeah, exactly.
Wealthy and comes with a cost.
Even as a young man, James Barrier was kind of a jack of all trades, and he was very motivated to be successful. Whenever he got to Vegas, he started a mobile mechanic business fixing cars out of his own van. And he was good at it, and people loved his attention to detail, and he had a larger-than-life personality. He was a mechanic by trade, but an entertainer at heart. And so he worked hard, and he saved his money, and finally, in 1988, he had saved enough money to open his own little auto repair shop just west of the Las Vegas Strip at 2480 Industrial Road. And he named the shop Allstate Auto and Marine. And he signed a 30-year lease for the property. That's how sure he was that his business was going to make it.
He was locked in.
Exactly. And the business gained a reputation for being reliable and trustworthy, and it began to grow. Now, in 1975, he got the nickname Buffalo Jim. And that nickname was born from a downtown casino with his encounter with a drunk Texas tourist that claimed to have had sex with a buffalo. Now, Jim laughed so hard And the tourist stopped and looked at him with his bushy black hair and, long flowing beard. And he says, "Hell, for all I know, you could be my love child." And the giggles ensued, and Buffalo took to the name.
Shut the fuck
After
up.
that, he began to call himself Buffalo Jim Barrier.
Wow.
It's kind of cool. It's kind of funny.
Hell yeah.
I mean, being from Texas, I can literally see one of us saying that.
Hey, at some point I had sex with Buffalo. For all I know, you'd be my damn love child. Hello, son.
That's so making it in the trailer reel next year.
Oh, Lord. Yeah. So from 1975 to 1990, James Barrier transformed himself into this character of Buffalo Jim. And child, Buffalo Jim was a walking parade. He was a mountain of a man at 6'2", 295 pounds, with long flowing black hair and a beard that flowed down to his chest. He adorned himself in jewelry, leather, and a top hat. And he even wore a bulletproof vest made of real bullets.
Oh,
shit.
That's right. He was not playing.
I love this dude already.
I can tell you.
Hell yeah.
I love everything about this guy. And so this self-taught mechanic had built a larger-than-life persona and a larger-than-life life. His entrepreneurial sense had catapulted him into the Las Vegas spotlight. And in 1990, he became a wrestling promoter. And by 1996, he owned and operated his own wrestling school with the WWE champion, Yokozuna.
Yokozuna,
a.k.a. Rodney Anoa'i.
Rodney Anoa'i, Yokozuna. So all of the names. Samoans that you see on WWE television, they're all cousins and they're all part of that family.
So he opened up a wrestling school with say his name again?
Yokozuna.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Now, he also established his own Buffalo Wrestling Federation. And he began to host bouts and matches wrestling under the Buffalo Wrestling Federation.
That's what I want to name my business.
I mean, he was already a wrestling promoter before he knew he was a wrestling promoter. He was a larger than life character. He had come up with his own gimmick. This dude is literally living his gimmick.
That's right. And he had his own popular TV show called Gym Wars that aired on Friday nights. Sometimes it was Gym Wars. And sometimes it was held at the wrestling school. Las Vegas and pro wrestling was the perfect fit for Buffalo Jim Barrier.
I love it.
Oh, man.
And he was evolving into a Las Vegas icon. I just grin every time I think about him. He just this larger than life personality, this picture in my head.
Mm-hmm. I'm like, talk about your American dream.
Lady. Yes.
That's Dusty Rhodes. That's the American dream.
Nope. This is the American dream right here on the screen.
So he was evolving into a Las Vegas icon, and the walls of the Allstate Auto and Marine shop were covered with photos and autographs of famous boxers and wrestlers and ultimate fighters. And he drew the attention of television networks. He was a living, breathing, tall tale in Sin City for 37 years. And speaking of tall tales, a rumor began to circulate around Las Vegas that the spirit of Elvis Presley had come to Buffalo Jim at the auto shop because he found no one else that he trusted to take care of his Cadillacs.
Hey, you're telling me there's all these kind of people out there that can take care of cars, and this right here is
Elvis trusted that son of a bitch.
Decides,
right
knowing Elvis, I could see it.
I could see
it.
Absolutely,
I could see
it.
Oh, this is great. I love this so far.
Do you not love him? I told you guys how much I loved him.
Yeah.
Okay, so now Buffalo Jim was also an avid collector of celebrity memorabilia that ranged from lots of different vehicles all the way to a lock of Elvis Presley's hair.
Of course. Yeah,
he had
absolutely
a Jensen Inceptor that was once owned by Wayne Newton and a pink Cadillac that he let Kid Rock borrow to use as part of his proposal to Pamela Anderson in Las Vegas in 2002. So he had friends. And the Las Vegas stars frequented Buffalo Jim's business. He fixed their cars and he became friendly with Vegas staples like Muhammad Ali, Tony Curtis, Chris Christopherson, and Buffalo Jim knew everybody. He was acquainted with Hulk Hogan and Stone Cold Steve Austin and Sid Vicious and Dwayne The Rock Johnson. He called them friends.
He's my hero.
Right? You ain't lying, man.
Now, in his early days, Jim was known as a hard-partying, fun-loving wrestling promoter and business owner. And he would party into the wee hours of the morning with his wrestling friends Johnny Psycho Payne and The Undertaker.
Oh, he was friends with The Undertaker.
Hell yeah.
But he cleaned up his act when his first child, Jessica, was born in 1982. And until the birth of his daughter, Jim ran with a pack of friends who truly pursued the Las Vegas fast lane lifestyle. Over the next 10 years, Jim had 3 more children, Elise, Jennifer, and Jerica. His 4 little girls were his pride and joy, and he wanted to make sure that he would be around to take care of them. So he cleaned up his life. He started eating right. He went into overdrive to provide for his children. He didn't drink alcohol anymore. He had put away all of the illicit party drugs and traded all of his drinking and carousing for bottles of water. He only drank bottled water.
Hell yeah, good for him.
In addition to his auto repair business, wrestling school, TV show, wrestling promotions,
Federation.
Buffalo Wrestling Federation. Buffalo Jim also wrote a weekly column on auto repair in the now defunct Las Vegas Mercury entitled Nuts and Bolts with Buffalo Jim.
Because why wouldn't he?
Yeah. What a renaissance man.
No, for real.
So you can tell this guy was not
God, I want to be him when I grow up.
Slacker. So aside from being an entrepreneur, Jim was also a philanthropist. And he was also helping charities and raising money for good causes. And he was also known to be a true champion of the forgotten and the downtrodden members of the Las Vegas community that were often neglected and relegated to the shadows or hidden from the tourist under the glare of the harsh lights. He tirelessly promoted his businesses, his causes, and himself. Creativity and showmanship were his trademarks. And he also had a bit of a crazy sense of humor. For fun, he built a smoking volcano in the backyard of his $500,000 home. Just for fun.
Hell yeah.
I love this guy.
Then he also built what he called the Buff Wagon, which was a $27,000 customized 4-wheeled motorcycle decked out as a buffalo that shot real smoke out of its nostrils when you rode it around.
Because
I want this thing.
Because why shouldn't it?
I mean, why shouldn't it? So when you got on it, it looked like you were riding a buffalo with smoke shooting out its nostrils as you tore around on this 27,000. Whenever you tore around on the Buff Wagon.
I want the Buff Wagon.
I know,
me too. The Buff Wagon.
So when Jennifer Barrier was in kindergarten, the teacher asked the children to draw their favorite cartoon character.
Oh, shit.
And Jennifer drew her dad.
No.
And when the teacher asked her about her picture, she says, I don't have to watch cartoons. I watch my daddy.
Oh.
Isn't that sweet? But eventually in 2000, the relationship between the buffalo and his mate fizzled out. The children's mother moved to Seattle and took the kids with her. And
that crushed him because he seems like one of those type of dudes that had a big heart, probably.
Yeah.
Buffalo Jim was devastated because he lived for his children. He cleaned up his life for his children. He worked so hard for his children. But the baby, little Jerica, she wanted to stay with Daddy. And Buffalo Jim was ecstatic. He treated her like his little princess. They were like 2 peas in a pod, and they were each other's best friends. And Jerica would even appear on his wrestling shows as Little Buff.
Little Buff.
She was Little
that's
Buff.
Cute.
She was Little Buff. And the proud papa never missed a chance to brag about her. Jennifer and Elise would eventually move back to the Las Vegas area. But for a while, it was just Buffalo Jim and Little Buff taking on the world. So around 1970, just before Jim Barrier arrived in Las Vegas, at 2476 Industrial Road sat a club known as Billy Joe's. In 1978, mob member Tony Albanese bought the club and renamed it Billy Joe's Crazy Horse 2. You see, he already owned the Crazy Horse Saloon strip club. So in order to let patrons know that the business was his, he just gave it the same name.
Huh.
Now, in 1984, Bart, and I've heard it pronounced Rizzolo and Rizzolo, so we're going to roll with it. I'll probably say it both ways. Bart Rizzolo purchased the business so his son Rick Rizzolo, could run it. And he changed the name now to just the Crazy Horse 2 Gentlemen's Club.
And this is Crazy Horse 2 as in also, not
Yes,
the
it's
number
also,
2,
correct.
but as in also.
So it was still a strip joint, but maybe just a little bit classier because I put the word Gentlemen's Club after it. I don't know. But by 1986, Rick Rizzolo was buying Daddy out, and he became the majority club owner with the majority stake in the club. So there was this little space next to the Crazy Horse 2 that was not being used in 1984. And Jim thought that that would be a great place for his auto repair shop. And that is when he signed the 30-year lease with Tony Albanese, just prior to Bart Rizzolo moving in. So the repair shop sat on this side of the strip club in the middle. Now, one side would be the Allstate Marine Garage, the strip club, and the other side, Buffalo Jim rented that too. He made it the Buffalo Jim Wrestling School. And it was then that he met the strip club manager, partial owner, Rick Rizzolo. Now, Jim made friends with almost everyone he met, but in the 1980s, he also made a significant enemy. Little did Jim know that what started out as a tenuous friendship between he and Rick Rizzolo would become a feud that would last for the next 2 decades.
Uh-oh.
Even though Buffalo Jim tried to befriend Rick Rizzolo, a deep animosity arose rather than a friendship. The reason? Money. Rick Rizzolo's Gentlemen's Club was doing so well that he wanted to expand and gain the much needed parking space for his club. And so he needed the real estate occupied by Jim's auto shop and wrestling school that the building seemed to be sandwiched in between. And he wanted Jim out. Sooner the better. Now, Rick Rizzolo was a man that was alleged to have mob ties and deep political connections. And this business, the Crazy Horse 2, was a hotbed for corruption. And it had become infamous for investigations into racketeering, prostitution, money laundering, and other alleged crimes that took place on the property. Police records show that 9 assaults, 6 robberies had all involved, and it all involved Crazy Horse 2 employees, happened on the property, along with 737 police responses in 3 years.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
And many of these police calls were from customers. And it was based on customers being beaten after refusing to sign falsified credit card bills. But in all that time, there have been no criminal prosecutions.
I wonder why.
Now, on any given night, I'm about to tell you why. On any given night, known members of mafia families, almost all mafia families, could be found socializing with Las Vegas politicians, law enforcement officials, underworld figures, and Rick Rizzolo at the Crazy Horse 2 Gentlemen's Club. Now, interestingly enough, the Crazy Horse 2 Gentlemen's Club also made quite a few contributions to Las Vegas politicians. Now, Blake, I believe that I sent you that list. And this list not only includes both the mayor, Oscar Goodman, the district attorney, a clerk, and you can see the mayor's was a $40,000 donation to his campaign.
Damn.
And that is the list of Vegas officials that were basically being bankrolled by the Crazy Horse 2 and Rick Rizzolo.
God, you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 judges on there. 12 judges on there. Holy shit. County clerk, councilman. No, 13 judges, 2 councilmen, a clerk, an attorney, a district attorney, and a mayor. Whew, buddy.
So now that you kind of know what Rick Rizzolo is all about, many people faced with dealing with an alleged mobster would have just complied and left the property and moved out. But not Buffalo Jim. He wouldn't budge. And thus began a 20-year feud that would see the men meet repeatedly in court. Buffalo Jim became even more well-known in Las Vegas due to his feud with Rick Rizzolo. At first, in the late 90s, Rizzolo actually tried to evict Barrier because at that point he had become, Rick Rizzolo had become Buffalo Jim's landlord.
Yeah.
But Barrier refused to leave. So he took him to court, but the court ruled that Rizzolo didn't have any grounds for eviction. So the next time, Rizzolo just asked Jim to move his shop. Jim declined.
I like Jim.
Business, and he was doing well.
I like Jim a lot. He's like, nah, I'm good.
Good
so
right here.
Next, Rizzolo tried to get Barrier to sell the lease on the property for pennies on the dollar. Now, the estimated value of the property where Jim's business set was $1.5 million.
True.
Yeah. I wouldn't sell for pennies on the dollar either. Screw that.
Rizzolo offered him pennies on the dollar. And again, Jim said, no, thank you. And he declined. Now, sources differ on what happened at the fourth attempt. Some say that Rizzolo offered Jim another lowball offer to sell out. And some say he was offered nothing at all, perhaps just threatened. So, you know what Jim did? Buffalo Jim went to the local papers and is quoted as saying, "They want me to move out. I've got children to feed and I don't think so. Why should I move? If you're not going to pay me, I'm staying."
Pretty solid logic to me.
Yeah.
And at this point, it's alleged that Rizzolo and his Crazy Horse 2 associates mounted a campaign of intimidation and harassment. Strange things began to happen around the auto shop. Foul-smelling dumpsters from the strip club were parked right behind the auto shop's back door. Phony fire zone signs were put up outside Barrier's shop. Buffalo Jim's shop was broken into on several occasions. Customers' cars that were left overnight awaiting repairs began to be vandalized, and on several occasions, they were actually towed away. And then Jim found surveillance cameras pointed right at his business. Then the phone calls and the letters began, threatening Buffalo Jim's life. And finally, after finding used condoms and needles in the shared parking lot with the Crazy Horse 2, Jim sought the help and formed a friendship with City Councilman Steve Miller. And with that help, Jim launched his own campaign against Rizzolo, alleging that he had witnessed drug abuse and beatings at Rizzolo's club. And even after the threats to his own safety, Buffalo Jim became an outspoken enemy of the mob who refused to back down. He was not going to quit.
He's a brave man.
That's right. That's right. Now, at this point, the damage incurred to his customers' vehicles was ranging in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. And Jim was paying for the repairs out of his own pocket because in his mind, that was the right thing to do. And no matter what the cost, Buffalo Jim Barrier would not budge. He began to make police reports on the events that he witnessed going on at the Crazy Horse 2 strip club. And in 1998, Buffalo Jim began to film and produce his own TV show from the wrestling school adjacent to the Crazy Horse 2.
Wait. That's the whole title of it? Are you saying it's from the wrestling school?
No, well,
No, that was Gym
He
Wars.
started. Gym Wars. He started filming Gym Wars.
Oh,
at the
Gym Wars.
wrestling
Sorry, I
school.
must have totally
Yeah,
missed you say
Yeah,
that.
I didn't say Gym Wars, but his show was called Gym Wars, and he decided then he was going to start filming it at the wrestling school that sat on the other side of the Crazy Horse too.
Okay.
So as retribution, Rizzolo filed loitering complaints against Jim.
Oh my God.
Now, this was probably my favorite story I found. So Buffalo Jim had built this gigantic 14-foot high animated smoke belching paper mache buffalo, complete with a sign that said, "Don't mess with the buffalo." He had intended to enter it in the El Dorado parade.
That's fucking awesome.
The parade was canceled. And he told the newspaper reporters whenever they came to see the beast that was conveniently positioned in the parking lot he shared with Rizzolo, "Yeah, I wanted this bad boy in the parade. I thought a lot of people in Vegas would like it, brother." And the buffalo took up residence at the auto shop. And Rizzolo's fury continued to intensify.
That's fucking hilarious, man.
You can see it parked in front of the strip club behind it.
Yeah.
Just like
That's
right.
right.
Smack
That's
dab
where
in
it
front
took
of
up
it.
residence.
That's awesome.
Don't mess with the buffalo, dude. I love this guy. He's a legend.
Like,
he's a legend.
Yeah, he's like, you want to get petty? I can get real fucking petty.
Don't mess with the buffalo.
He
It
made
shoots.
He's
like,
it
look,
for the
it
El
shoots.
Dorado parade. It wasn't his fault the parade got canceled. That was like a charity event.
Yeah, but he's like, look, it shoots fire too.
14 feet high, belching smoke.
Jesus.
Parked right by the front door. I love it.
Yep.
That's where he had to take up residence. Where else was he going to put it? In 2001, in true showman's fashion, according to the Las Vegas Weekly, and to garner publicity, his still relatively, he was garnering publicity during his still relatively early legal battles with Rizzolo.
Mm-hmm.
Buffalo Jim issued a public challenge. He challenged Rick Rizzolo to a no-holds-barred steel cage match with him, and Jim stated, "I'll settle this once and for all. If I win, he must vacate the premises within 2 years, and if he wins, I've got to leave."
Damn, he booked himself in a loser leave town match with a fucking mafia member. Jesus Christ. I love this dude.
This guy's awesome, man.
Now, that might have meant the end of the Crazy Horse too if Jim won, which definitely would have upset Dennis Rodman, who was a known patron. And of course, Buffalo Jim would have been the odds-on favorite. He was 6'2", 298 at that point, and he very much dwarfed the 5'9", 220-pound Rizzolo.
Jesus.
Now, the challenge was never publicly answered, and Rick Rizzolo continued to seethe with anger at appearing to look like a fool. And
I was just gonna say, because that's kind of what he's doing at this point, is that Rizzolo is really trying to make a very strategic business move if he can get the space, and Buffalo Jim is just making a mockery of it, is basically what he's doing at this point. I mean,
you got into a dick measuring competition with a wrestling promoter. Who do you think's gonna win that competition?
Yeah, but I mean, it's don't get me wrong, the retaliation, in my opinion, is warranted, because he's being retaliated against. Yeah, but I like how it's very, I don't know, Rizzolo is very like, "No, I'm trying to get more square footage for my strip club because I need more money." And Buffalo Jim's like, "Dude, still cage fight. Come on, let's go, man. Bring it." I mean, it's just like, it's like a big F you to Rizzolo. That's just like, dude, I'm never going to take you seriously, man.
Come at me, bro.
Exactly. I love this guy. Oh my God.
I told you, I love this dude. Everything about this dude, I love.
He might be my new favorite.
I know. So finally, in 2002, Buffalo Jim Barry's attorney, Gus Flangus, and I think that's how you say his name, Flangas.
What a name.
Yeah, it's spelled Flangas, but I think it's pronounced Flangus. Filed a lawsuit.
Sounds like a condition.
Yeah. So in 2002, the attorney filed a lawsuit against the club and Rizzolo, seeking $1 million in damages on Jim's behalf, citing lost income, interference with his business, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. And on May 1st of 2002, Rizzolo purchased the shopping center. In retaliation, on May 1st of 2002, Rizzolo purchased the entire shopping center where Buffalo Jim ran his shows. And then he
Aw.
filed loitering complaints again and loitering lawsuits against the wrestling school. But once again, the judge threw the case out. But Buffalo Jim's attorney stumbled upon something very interesting when he was filing that initial lawsuit. Gus Flungus found out that in 1995, the FBI had investigated Rick Rizzolo for racketeering and tax evasion. Now, the club had developed a reputation for illicit activities, drug use, substantiated rumors of mob involvement, and violence against customers. These lawsuits and investigations were unfolding from all directions. And one, which ended up being the downfall, stemmed from a Kansas City tourist that allegedly was beaten and suffered a broken neck after visiting the club.
Holy shit.
Good
The
Lord.
dispute was over the man's refusal to sign a second credit card receipt for his bill. Authorities began investigating the Crazy Horse 2 after a spate of violent crimes and suspected illegal activity over several years. And one of these, violent crimes that they cited was a man named Rick Sandland, who had suffered permanent brain damage after being beaten outside the club by Rick Rizzolo with a baseball bat in 1985.
Jesus
Now,
Christ.
Rizzolo claimed he was
Jesus.
acting in self-defense. So take that for what it's worth.
Mhm.
And even though they hadn't made the case yet, the FBI and the IRS now were both interested in the Crazy Horse 2 strip club.
Well, there's two acronyms I don't want after my ass.
Mhm.
So a mutually beneficial alliance was struck between the Buffalo and the feds. Over the next few years, Buffalo Jim kept in contact with the FBI and reporters who were investigating Rizzolo's claims that investigating Rizzolo over claims that he was attached to organized crime families. Jim and AmericanMafia.com photographer Mike Christ documented illegal activities around the Crazy Horse 2 parking lot and the front entrance. And for 2 years, on almost a weekly basis, boxes of incriminating evidence against Rizzolo collected by Buffalo Jim were sent to the FBI. And as a result of the Kansas City man's lawsuit, Jim's mountain of evidence, the FBI was able to open a RICO case against Rizzolo in 2002. Now, if you don't know what RICO is, that's a racketeering, influenced, and corrupt organization. That is the big umbrella where they can take down,
Everybody.
everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. So they opened that in 2002. Now, on February 20th of 2003, the Crazy Horse 2 was raided by over 100 government officials, including DEA,
Whoa.
FBI, the Las Vegas police, and 2 SWAT teams that were investigating the links between the club and organized crime. And 170 items of evidence were seized in the raid.
Do we, really quick before we keep going, do we know of any major figures were they ever named as who were hanging out at the club?
They did have some, they did, but to go into all of them, I mean, think of a major organized crime family. They named New York, Chicago. They named Philly,
Wow.
Jersey. The names of people that patroned this club, there was a huge list.
Yeah.
Any night of the week, you could find a member. They specifically mentioned that there was members of the Bonanno and the Gambino crime families who would hang out at the club every time they were in Las Vegas. So
wow.
Yeah, this had any mafia family you can name. They had been in the Crazy Horse 2 Gentlemen's Club.
So that's where the story takes a horrible turn, because it's kind of like up until now, like we were saying, it's a dick growing contest at that point. Who's is bigger. But now Buffalo Jim,
he got involved in some shit,
getting involved into something that the other side doesn't take lightly.
No.
Right. And with Buffalo Jim Barrier's help, the FBI and the IRS eventually found that Rizzolo hadn't been paying his taxes. And authorities were eventually able to charge Rizzolo with income tax evasion.
Oof.
Buffalo Jim gave testimony in the trial against
Oh,
Rizzolo.
no.
Oh shit.
And when asked
Damn.
about some of what he had experienced, he said, I was afraid to leave anything at my lot because of vandalism and break-ins or them even towing my cars away. It was like constantly being under siege.
You know, I gotta wonder if maybe he testified, like maybe his own hubris got the best of him because he was like, you know, I'm such a larger than life figure. I'm such a big figure. I can, you know, out these people and nothing's gonna happen.
I just think he had balls of fucking steel, man.
I
Like,
agree.
I mean,
He wasn't gonna back
it's
down.
like, shit, here's $1 million lawsuit. Here I'm joining in with the FBI. Now I'm testifying in your trial. Shit,
Yeah.
dude.
I mean, he took this grudge all the way to. I mean, he pushed it all the way.
That because he was so well known, he was safe.
That's what I was saying. Like maybe he thought that he was such a big figure, such a large figure, living. You know, if something happened to him, it wouldn't go unnoticed. Maybe that's why he did it, but
Well,
not a good idea.
Like many federal cases that involved the mob, Rizzolo took a plea deal. He pled guilty to tax evasion charges in 2006. And that's how long this went. And as part of the plea bargain, Rick Rizzolo and 16 other club officials pled guilty to a single felony charge of conspiracy to defraud the United States. Rick Rizzolo was required to pay $17 million in fines and $10 million to tourist Nick Henry. That was the Kansas City tourist.
Damn.
Good Lord.
Damn it, boy.
Very soon after that, Buffalo Jim receives a letter dated February 1st, 2006. And it read, Bart Rizzolo, now that's Daddy Rizzolo, Bart Rizzolo has been overheard telling some of his close contacts that there will be violent attacks against you. He has let it be known that you will suffer in the very near future.
Oh, shit.
This was just an anonymous letter that was sent to him.
Mm-hmm.
In early 2007, Rizzolo was finally sentenced to a year and a day in prison. But he only served 10 months because, you know, for good behavior. And then he got released in March 2008 to live at a halfway house close to the Crazy Horse 2 Gentlemen's Club. Now, Rizzolo was supposed to be at the halfway house for a month. And even after the admission of Rizzolo's corporation that, you know, the club had sought to extort payment from patrons and explicit threats of violence and force, Mayor Oscar Goodman believed that the charges were just too harsh.
Of course.
So Rizzolo was released from the halfway house after only serving 1 week there and was told that he had to serve out the rest of his sentence on house arrest.
I guess that 40,000 came back to come in handy.
I guess so.
Mm-hmm.
In a survey taken in 2007, Buffalo Jim was asked about his most significant professional accomplishment.
God.
And his answer?
No.
Being able to stay in business while being attacked by the mafia for 25 years.
Oh, God.
Oh, my God. He is just flaunting it at this point. Jesus.
Oh, come on, Buffalo Jim.
Take your win and go quietly into the night. But, you know, he's not going to.
Oh, man. This guy's, I'm determined. He's got balls of steel. That's what this is.
Mm-hmm.
But even though his main nemesis, Rizzolo, was behind bars, Barrier continued to be harassed. Threatening letters and phone calls continued. Some stating Rick Rizzolo was planning to murder him.
Uh-oh.
Easter weekend of 2008, a break-in takes place at Buffalo Jim's auto and body shop. Jim files a police report and alerted many people, including reporters at the Las Vegas Review-Journal, about the break-in. The suspicious activity had started back up. Buffalo Jim legitimately became concerned for his safety, fearing that Rick Rizzolo may have actually ordered his death. Now, Buffalo Jim was friends with a reporter named Longobardi, and the two men spoke on a weekly basis, and Jim told Longobardi about his concerns. Now, Longobardi was a journalist, And he wrote in an article, I have always known Jim to be a sensible man, and I deem his worries generally valid. And I told him so. I told him to be aware of ambushes. He countered by stating, and he's quoting Jim here, he countered by stating that his enemies in name, Rizzolo family and their associates, would try to get him through a stratagem. They're going to do it through a woman, or they're going to try to drug me.
Well, okay, then.
That's what he was quoted as saying in the paper.
Huh.
Now, Buffalo Jim's little daughter, Jerica, she's 15 at this point, and she still lived with her father. She remembers her father receiving threatening letters and phone calls that she heard people screaming at him through the phone. But her father would just laugh it off. He tried to put the worried child's mind at ease. Jim told his daughter that she and her sisters would always be safe and they would always be protected, no matter what. And according to his other daughter, Jennifer, he had told her that he had to be careful and he had to watch his back. But he wasn't going to back down, and he wasn't going to let anyone just take anything away from him.
Mm-hmm.
Now, on Friday, April the 4th, Rick Rizzolo completed his house arrest and was a free man. On that same Friday, Buffalo Jim spoke with City Council member and friend Steve Miller. And even with Rick Rizzolo's release, Barrier didn't keep a low profile. Instead, he was actively looking for a new location to move his auto repair business. And he was trying to raise funds by selling some of his, memorabilia.
Mm-hmm.
Later that same Friday, April the 4th, Buffalo Jim reports receiving a threatening phone call from a self-described hitman. He immediately called the Las Vegas Weekly journalist friend, Longobardi, and he discussed the suspicious phone call with him. And he alerted the police. Now, on the morning of Saturday, April the 5th, Buffalo Jim Barrier received a letter in the mail at the Auto Marine shop alleging that plots were being made on his life by Rick Rizzolo and Rizzolo's family. The letter warned that Rizzolo's people had been in meetings and were up to no good. The letter also discussed the use of a female to get access into Barrier's business and mentioned, make sure you're not being followed. Oscar Goodman has made some very bad remarks of you. Now, I want to actually read you this letter because this was entered into evidence. So this is the actual letter.
Okay.
It says, Mr. Barrier, meetings have been taking place at various locations around town by Rick Rizzolo, Bart Rizzolo, Oscar Goodman, Tony Seguro, Gary Reese, and some of Rick's goons. Rick was one of the persons driving around your property last week. Be careful. He's up to no good. He's using people to get close to you. He discussed using a female to get access to your business. Cliff Diamond is one of the players in where he's hiding his cash. Go for dinner on a Monday at Piedro's. He's usually there. There are leaks out that Rizzolo and Faraci are tangling in the business of Eden. I don't know what that means. Tangling the business of Eden, Leopard Lounge, all that jazz, and the Ocean's 11 bar. If your address is still at, and he puts the 2780 Industrial Boulevard, make sure you're not being followed. Oscar Goodman has made some very bad remarks about you. Keep in mind, he does feel he can do whatever is necessary to see you fail.
I wonder who's sending him all these messages, these heads ups. That's
it is not signed, and that is the letter copied straight from the police record on it that what you can have access to, and that is all it says. So I'm guessing that this Eden and Leopard Lounge, and the Ocean's 11 bar, I'm guessing that those are all new fronts for illegal activities, and this Cliff Diamond guy is where Rizzolo's hiding all of his money. Because, see, in order to try to get out of his paying his fines, Rizzolo tried to tell the court that he was indigent and that he had no money. Okay? So I think that's why that is mentioned.
So it's like a shell game, just moving his money around.
Pretty
wherever.
much. That's what he's saying. And he's naming the guy that's helping. Now, whoever this is naming the guy that's helping Rizzolo. Okay. Now, Buffalo Jim immediately sent this letter to the Las Vegas Metro Police Department, Organized Crime Bureau, the FBI, various news writers, and his friend, City Councilman Steve Miller. Sent a copy of this letter to all of them, which is why it's probably still available to be seen.
And we're still on April the 4th at this point.
No, this
April
is
5th
the morning
now.
of April the 5th.
Morning of April 5th. Okay.
Yes, Saturday,
just making
April
sure.
the 5th.
Okay.
So Friday, April the 4th, Rick Brislow is free man.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. We're on April the 5th. In the morning,
that's when he's sending this. He gets this letter and he starts sending it out. Okay.
Now, on the evening of April the 5th, Saturday, April the 5th, Jim receives a phone call sometime between 6 and 7 p.m. His daughter, Jerica, heard her father's part of the conversation and could vaguely make out that the caller at the other end of the phone sounded like a female. Someone wanted to sell a Harley Davidson motorcycle, and was he interested? Sure. So he agreed to meet the party and check out the bike and have dinner.
He was just told the female is trying to get close to you. Don't, Jesus Christ.
When he left his home at 435 Los Feliz Street in Las Vegas, Nevada on Saturday at 7. So he left at Saturday at 7:20 p.m. Now he was in good spirits. He was happy. He told his youngest daughter, Jerica, that he was going to go to dinner with some friends and that he would be home by midnight because he took care of his kids. He was home with his daughter. If he told his daughter he was going to be home, he was going to be home. This was something that she could, take it to the bank. If he said, I'm going to be home by midnight, he would be home by midnight. He didn't just run off at all hours and abandon her. So he told his youngest daughter, Jerica, he was going to dinner with some friends and that he would return by midnight. And he drove off in his prized possession, a white Rolls Royce. The car had originally been owned by casino developer Bob Stupak, but had been seized by Barrier after he had failed to pay for repair services. And this car was as distinctive and well known around Las Vegas as Buffalo Jim Barrier himself was. Now, according to Barrier's cell phone, he spoke to someone from an unsaved number at 7:40 p.m., and the call lasted for 7 minutes and 47 seconds. Later that evening, his daughter Jerica texted him, but he didn't reply. Now, that was very unusual. So she tried once more, but no result, and she went to bed. She got up in the morning to find that her father was not home.
Uh-oh.
So she tried to call him again, but got the same result. No answer. And she began to get scared, and she began to worry. On the morning of April 6, 2008, Buffalo Jim Barrier was found dead in a Motel 6 on Boulder Highway. I'm going to tell you this right now. Whenever I lived in Vegas, I know right where that Motel 6 is. It sits right in front of Boulder Station Casino. And Boulder Station, the Boulder Strip as it's known, whenever I lived there, was a sketchy effing area.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? That was a sketchy area. So there's a little personal insight from that area in Las Vegas. On the morning of April 6th at 11:30 a.m., a housekeeper knocked on the door of room 105 at the Motel 6 on Boulder Highway. Hearing no response, she opened the door. She saw a man that she thought was sleeping, so she quickly closed the door and continued about her rounds. She returns to the room at 12:30, knocks on the door, gets no response, uses her key card and enters, sees that the man is still there sleeping. So again, she closes the door quickly and she walks away. At 1:10, she returns again. She's got to get this room cleaned. And she opens the door and she finds that the man is still in the same position. She and another housekeeper enter the room together and try to wake the man, only to find that he's cold to the touch.
Uh-oh.
And obviously dead. The violent crimes detectives responded to the scene in the early afternoon. And according to police, the father of four was lying face up on the bed, nude from the waist down, with a white powdery substance on his beard and on his unbuttoned shirt. The investigators didn't find any semen present at the scene, and there was also a prescription bottle of Valium on the bedside table with the label partially torn off. Jerica and Elise Barrier, Jerica was 15 and Elise was 20, were at their father's home at 10 p.m. because Jerica's now called her sister. and Elise had come over, and they're both at their father's home at 2 p.m. when an officer calls the house. Jerica answered the phone, hoping it was her dad. But it wasn't. It was a police officer who asked if they could please speak to an adult. Jerica turned the volume up as loud as she could on the phone and called for her sister Elise. Elise took the phone, and the officer informed her that their father was dead and they needed to come to the Motel 6 on Boulder Highway to identify the body. Jerica heard the terrible news of her father's death through the phone. And I never can handle that. Just that whole idea is terrible to me.
Mm-hmm.
And according to Jerica, she and her sister Elise sped to the Motel 6, sometimes driving over 100 miles per hour on the freeway while both cried uncontrollably. Then Elise communicated the devastating news to Buffalo's eldest daughters, Jessica, 26, and Jennifer, 24. Arriving at the Motel 6, the police allowed the girls to just enter the room. Jerica and Elise were in disbelief when they saw their father's body on a stretcher, laying inside a body bag. And Jerica threw herself up on her father and clung to him, while Elise gave the identification that, yes, the body of the man was Buffalo Jim Behringer. Jerica had to be told by the police to let go of her father. They had to remove the body. The larger-than-life character Buffalo Jim was deceased at the age of 55. And as the body of Buffalo Jim was being wheeled out, the police handed the girls an envelope containing their father's wallet, car keys, cell phone, and the motel receipt. The police also removed the remainder of the medication from the prescription bottle on the bedside table and returned the empty container to the daughters, even though the part of the label that had the name of the prescription was not visible and had been torn off or removed. At the scene, the death was ruled accidental, so the area wasn't treated as a crime scene. The shaken and distraught girls left the room, and as they looked around, they didn't see the white Rolls Royce. And after searching the parking lot for the vehicle, they approached the officers and asked where their father's car was. The police responded, "We didn't find a car, just the keys." So the girls said, "Will you please open a missing vehicle report on the car?" But something just wasn't right. There were 2 cups of water on the side of the bed, and the room was very clean. Their father only drank bottled water, and he was also notoriously messy. The police had also found his garage door opener in the room, but Barrier always kept it in the car. The girls began to go through the items that was returned to them in the envelope. Everything in his wallet was gone, including his ID. It was empty except for a lone dollar bill that had been folded in half. His daughter said that their father never folded his money in his wallet and often carried large sums of cash on him. So something about this just didn't feel right. Some alleged that folded dollar bill in the wallet, the single lone folded dollar bill, is a mob hit calling card. There were also 2 silver Motorola phones in the room, visible, that did not belong to their father. His cell phone was black. Oddly enough, the 2 silver phones were actually listed on the police report, but Barrier's black cell phone was not. Then Jerica, grabbing her father's phone, checked the phone call log, and there was a voice message. Jerica listened to the message, hoping to hear whoever it was that might have been the last person to talk to her father. Jerica heard a woman in the message, in a concerned voice, say, "Hey, Buffalo, this is Lisa. Is everything okay?" Jerica immediately hit redial on the number and called it back. "Is this Lisa?" she asked. But the person on the other side didn't reply. Then she asked, "Did you know Buffalo Jim?" A woman's voice replied, "I don't know Buffalo Jim," and hung up. But Jerica heard the voice, and she believed that it was the same woman that not only left the message in her father's voicemail, but was also the female that she had heard talking to her phone on, talking to her father on the phone before he left the day before. They told the police about this. They alerted them to their finding. And then they headed back to their now deceased father's home to try to comprehend how much their lives had changed in an instant. And because the death was presumed accidental, the room was not secured. It was not sealed. There were no fingerprints or DNA taken at the scene. The Las Vegas Metro Police Department released the room back to the Motel 6 management between 4:30 and 5:30 p.m. so that housekeeping could set about cleaning the room for the next guest. Now, several hours after the girls left the Motel 6, between 5:30 and 6 p.m., they received a phone call from the Las Vegas PD saying that the Rolls Royce had been found. It had been spotted in the front parking lot near the office. It had been miraculously found in a parking lot that had already been searched.
And that's a small parking lot too.
Yeah.
I believe I sent you the overhead view of that parking lot. Can you pull that up so that they can see that?
I don't know if you sent me the overhead, but you sent me a pretty daggum good shot of the parking lot, especially the office area.
That's the parking lot.
Yeah.
Now, you think you're going to miss a white Rolls Royce in that parking lot?
That, and especially if it was known across Vegas as
That's
much as it was
No
known, I mean,
shit.
you'd see it. Yeah.
No shit. And that's I'm going to assume with the big old welcome over it is going to be the office area.
Yeah.
So
that would be the entrance. You're telling me that nobody saw that when they pulled in, when they pulled out, and after they'd searched that area, everybody missed a white Rolls Royce?
I mean, even if, because I see a little bit of a building on the right hand side just behind this main building. So even if the building itself like does a U shape and there is another parking lot behind that, that's going to be just as big as this parking lot. You could walk around the corner and go, oh, okay, there's 2 cars in here. Cool. And be able to spot it. So,
right.
Mm-hmm.
So a close family friend went back up to the Motel 6 to retrieve the car.
I ain't buying it.
They noted that it was very clean. So they asked the police to come and do an analysis of it. And the police analysis revealed that there were no prints, no hairs, no trash, no nothing. Not even Buffalo Jim's fingerprints were found in the car.
A little too clean.
Well, yeah, been wiped down, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is the part that truly fascinates me.
Oh, this is the part? Because
later,
I've been fascinated the whole damn time already.
10 days later, police tracked down Lisa.
Oh.
And they interviewed her.
Okay.
And according to Lisa's voluntary statement to Metro Police, this is what happened. Buffalo Jim met her and picked her up at the Chevron gas station on Rancho Drive and Charleston Boulevard. So he picked her up in his Rolls Royce.
Okay.
Lisa also mentioned that she had initially called Barrier because her friend wanted to sell him a Harley. And according to the Barrier family, police never investigated or looked into this supposed friend who was selling a motorcycle. Lisa continued and stated that they drove to the Motel 6 and parked at the back of the lot on the side. And according to surveillance camera and the timestamp on that, at 8:22 p.m., Buffalo Jim checks into the Motel 6 on Boulder Highway and gets room 105 assigned to him. And he lists the number of guests as 2. Witnesses stated that Barrier was alone at the time of check-in and that there was no activity around the prominent area that his room was located in. But surveillance cameras show a shadowy figure in silhouette following close behind Barrier as he exits and goes towards the room. However, Motel 6 key logs show that at 8:15 p.m., Room 105 was accessed using a guest key card 7 minutes prior to Jim Barrier checking in and being assigned room 105. The motel had no record of staff going into the room. Now, according to her statement, she and Buffalo Jim had known each other for years, and they were playing little sexual fantasy games at the motel. And Buffalo Jim was consuming lots of cocaine, and he was acting really paranoid.
He didn't drink or do drugs.
In her original statement, Lisa stated that she left the room when Buffalo Jim went to the bathroom. But when questioned a little further by police and confronted with her statement, and after answering what seemed to be a series of leading questions, she then changed her statement to say she left the room after Buffalo had a seizure. The amended report says he suddenly sat up on the bed and began clutching his chest. And then he went into like a mild seizure. And according to Lisa, as soon as the convulsing and clutching his chest began, that was the point where she panicked and she left the motel room. Not long after she fled the room, Lisa called Buffalo's cell phone, leaving a message asking if he was okay. But of course, that call was never answered. Lisa never called the paramedics, although she told detectives that Buffalo was a friend. Oh, and she admitted that she was a dancer at the Crazy Horse 2 Gentlemen's Club.
Very interesting.
From point A to point B. There we go.
Yep.
No last name nor information is known about the woman known as Lisa. And this is on April 7th. Medical examiner Larry Sims from the Clark County Coroner's Office was assigned to perform Buffalo Jim Barrier's autopsy. He told the family that he, with confidence, could place the time of death as between 7 p.m. and 9 p.m. on April the 5th of 2008. He also stated that Mr. Barrier had no significant external trauma. And again, no significant external trauma. I always look for the syntax in here. Mm-hmm. He said he wasn't shot, stabbed, beaten, or strangled. And Barrier's death was estimated to have taken place shortly after he checked into his room. And when the toxicology reports returned, there was found to be 245 nanograms per millimeter of cocaine in Jim's system. Now, the minimum lethal level for cocaine is in the 100 to 200 nanograms per millimeter range. Mm-hmm. So the cause of death was listed as an apparent heart attack due to cocaine intoxication. And Barrier's death was ruled accidental, citing dilated cardiomyopathy, which is basically inflamed heart muscles. There were also, strangely enough, no Valium tablets found in Jim's stomach. However, later, after a second toxicology report was run, it did reveal that GHB was in Buffalo Jim's system as well. But they decided that it wasn't determined to be a cause of his death, so they let it go. Now, Barrier's 4 daughters are adamant that their father was murdered. They point to several eerie details surrounding the case, including his missing ID and cash, a shifting testimony of the woman who he spent his last hours with, the all too clean motel room where he died, that there was no cocaine found in the hotel room, no drug paraphernalia found in the hotel room, or at the scene of Jim's death. The girls had not seen this powdery substance on their father's beard and shirt when they identified the body. And coincidentally, that substance that was alleged to have been found, it was never tested. Never tested to see if it was cocaine, and it was never tested to see if it matched the substance that was in Jim Barrier's body. They also cite the multiple cell phones that had no apparent owner in the room. They cite Lisa's inconsistent story, the uninvestigated GHB in Jim's system, the unidentified person alleged to have followed their father towards his hotel room, room 105. And then there's that little incident with the hair sample. 2 days after Jim Barrier's death, Jennifer Barrier requested that the detective working the case please take a hair sample and have it sent off to be tested. She wanted to know if her father had been a longtime drug user and had just hidden it from them, or had he been dosed. And the hair sample would show if he had had any drugs in his system prior to that night. The detective looked at her and responded, "Yeah, that is a good idea." So a few days after her father was buried, Jennifer got back in contact with the detective to see if the results had come back on that hair sample. The detective looked at her and said, it wasn't necessary. We didn't take a hair sample.
My God.
God almighty.
Of course, the biggest problem that they had are these mysterious 7 missing minutes that appear to jump backwards in time. These 7 minutes, a guest using a guest key card enters room 105 at 8:15 p.m. at the Motel 6. At 8:22, Buffalo Jim Barrier checks into the hotel and is assigned room 105 and is given his key cards then. The key log shows it as a guest card, not a manager card, not a housekeeping card. It shows as a guest card. The Las Vegas Police Department do not account for, nor do they make any attempt to reconcile this time discrepancy. They don't even address it. So because there was no hair sample taken, the family requested to exhume the body of Buffalo Jim Barrier for further testing. They were denied. And today, the daughters of Buffalo Jim Barrier are now asking for the 2008 case to be reopened. In October, Netflix Unsolved Mysteries released an episode about their efforts called Death in a Vegas Motel. Now, for its part, Metro PD was blunt. They said, quote, "The investigation into the death of James Barrier is closed. The investigation determined that it was not a homicide."
What investigation? They did nothing.
Yeah.
Right. Now, to the many who knew him, Buffalo Jim Barrier seemed invincible. Broad-shouldered, wild black hair, Barrier was a Las Vegas legend who'd made a name for himself as an auto repairman, wrestling promoter, and a friend to the variety of characters who made Las Vegas the unique place that it is. In 2005, Buffalo Jim Barrier was voted Las Vegas Journal Review's most colorful character. And on April the 12th of 2008, Buffalo Jim Barrier was laid to rest. And the Las Vegas Weekly covered Buffalo Jim's colorful service. Before he was to be buried, a multitude of people filled into the Palms mortuary in the old part of Las Vegas to see Buffalo Jim Barrier just one final time. They arrived in endless droves, little people, wrestlers, Hell's Angels, Native Americans of unadulterated descent, lawyers, journalists, world-renowned neurosurgeons, the lame, the homeless, the politicians, the bankers, television executives, men who had more money than God, boxers, leviathans, Elvis impersonators, and those like Buffalo Jim who fixed cars arrived with fresh grease stains across their jumpsuits. Sinners, saints, and celebrities all filed into the building. Elise Barrier, while she eulogized her father, said, "My dad would have done anything for his people." And waving her hand across the sea of mourners, she said, "You were all his people." And the people kept coming, to the point that Pastor Marvin Gant, with astonishment in his voice, said that in 32 years of conducting funeral services, he had never seen such a sight. And they all stood in silence. And that silence lay somewhere between reverence and incredulousness. They marched down the aisle one by one to see Buffalo in his giant coffin, large enough to fit a dozen men of normal size, that was suitable for a pharaoh. and they came in like the sea, spilling into every available seat and area, as if they were going to follow Buffalo Jim even into death. Or maybe they just had to be there just to see with their own eyes what their hearts couldn't believe was true, to see if Buffalo Jim was really dead. And even in death, Buffalo Jim Barrier was larger than life and a showman until the end. So if you have any information about the mysterious death of Buffalo Jim Barrier, please go to unsolved.com and please help these girls find out what happened to their father. Buffalo Jim Barrier needs justice.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't have any information, but I got a lot of shit I want to say real quick.
Yeah, absolutely. God almighty. I mean, like, the smoking gun is the fact that she was a dancer at the Crazy Horse. I mean, Jesus Christ. I mean, you have that. You have the repeated letters saying they're going to use a woman to get close to you to harm you. There you go. That's all you need. Number one. Number two. Number three, either the cops just absolutely bungled the shit out of all of this, or somebody was paid off to make it happen. I don't know.
So there are a couple things that really interested me in this, and my little nose for true crime is that the fact when the girls identified the body, Jerica, his youngest daughter, clung to him. She fell on her father and was hugging him and touching him, and even had to be told she had to let go. Don't you think she would have noticed if there was some kind of white powdery substance on her father's beard? She was laying across him.
Yeah.
She was laying across him. And Elise, whenever she identified the body, don't you think they would have noticed? Now, where this white powdery substance that they say was there came from, we don't know, because the girls didn't see it. And also, again, that another theory that I saw says that somehow or another, but it was planned for Buffalo Jim to get room 105, and that someone was actually in that room waiting for him. That all Lisa had to do was lure him there. Now, that coroner said he could say with confidence that Jim died between 7 p.m. and 9 p.m. Jim did not check in until 8:22, so he could not have been there doing wild sex games with Lisa for hours and snorting up bunches of cocaine. Couldn't have happened. Her timeline does not match to what the coroner says was the time he died. And they had, from the moment he died until 1 o'clock that afternoon, when the maids finally went in and shook him, to set up whatever kind of scene they wanted.
I mean, with the cocaine in his system, if there was no cocaine found in the room and he didn't snort cocaine.
And no paraphernalia in the room.
Somebody had to inject him with some.
That GHB was found by the second toxicologist.
No one's going to force cocaine down his nose. He had to have forcibly ingested it somehow.
My theory is that it was already planned for Buffalo Jim to get room 105. That whenever he says he's coming, Lisa calls, makes a phone call to whoever, and says, "I'm going to get him there. What room? Okay, he's coming." And my theory is that she makes a phone call. She gets in there. She has him go and check in. While he's checking in, she's like, "Hey, we're here." That door's opened while he's waiting to check in, because he does actually stand in line behind someone for about 8 or 9 minutes. So, hey, he's here. That room 105 is accessed. I think somebody was waiting for him in there, and whenever he walks in, somebody gets him with a needle full of GHB. He goes down to the floor. That's it. There would be no fight. They inject him with liquid cocaine, and they get him in there. They stage the scene, and out they go. Because that door was never opened by a key card for the rest of the night.
And two, here's something I want to say as well, because it seems like a lot of times in these unsolved or dubious murders, the cops or the detectives think they know better than the victim or the victim's families, and they will not adhere to their wishes, it seems like, because they're trying to get the case solved. Like, there's always a rush to judgment. There's never, with Buffalo Jim, the detective was like, "No, we don't need to get a hair sample. Why the fuck
They
not?
didn't find it necessary. It was deemed an accidental overdose, accidental death.
But it seems like they
But
would.
the family asked you to.
Exactly. It seems like they would adhere to the wishes.
Because you have to ask too many questions and get too many higher ups involved that are being paid off by this man that probably set this up.
Mm-hmm.
That's
right.
exactly the reason why. So,
but
shut it down. It's an accidental suicide or accidental overdose. Call it quits. Leave it alone. Because if you look back at it, at any basically big life person who, I don't know, just don't go to California and die for any reasons or get murdered because they're going to label you as an overdose or a suicide. Yeah. Because we go back, we just covered this back in August all the way back to Marilyn Monroe. I'm sorry, the bitch was killed. And you have something that's like, no, we're going to have to start looking into too many people and asking too many questions. It's going to uncover too many things that we ourselves have ties to. Shut it down.
Yeah. Well,
leave it alone.
It just seems like when you have these larger than life figures who end up mysteriously dead, they want to go ahead and sweep it under the rug as fast as they possibly can.
You cannot tell me that a regular cop looking at this case does not see the connection between the letter that he is receiving, that a woman is going to be involved, that his daughter overhears a woman on the phone, that there is somebody falling from the hotel, and that Lisa is involved in all of this, and that this is an accidental overdose. Pardon my language, but fucking bullshit.
And
all right there is enough.
This Lisa's name has been kept very secretive. I could not find it anywhere. Nowhere. And I even looked at the coroner's report. Do you see all this shit that's redacted in it? Redacted.
You have an evidence trail, like you were just saying, you have an evidence trail a mile fucking long. You have these constant court battles with these guys, the guy who owns the crazy horse and Jim himself. You have over decades and decades and decades of these court battles, and you have a motive. You have a smoking gun with the letters and with the woman who says she worked at the club.
Worked at the crazy horse.
So yeah, there you go. That's all.
There's
your
need. Connection.
Exactly.
Yep.
The only question that I really have about this isn't about whether he died or whether he was murdered or if it was an accidental overdose. That's just a farce right there. I mean, the answer for me is that he was murdered. The question for me is, who the hell was on the inside of the other side that was sending him all of this stuff? Like, hey, dude, watch out. That's the bigger question that I have. I don't know why that's a big question.
And you have the car wiped clean too. Let's mention that. There's no fingerprints. There's no hair. There's no nothing in the car. Come on.
I don't know about you, but I get into anybody's car, and I mean, I can't help it. I touch my hair a lot. I will shed in your car. And in fact, I actually make a point to pull out a piece of hair and leave it in somebody's car in case you do something nefarious to me.
Yeah. If it's your daily driver, no matter what there's going to be dust. There's going to be hair particles. There's going to be,
remember, Buffalo Jim was notoriously messy. He was notoriously messy. You think that and allegedly he picked up Lisa, remember? And she, and whatever and I left this part of the because it was just getting so long. But whenever they ask her what happened whenever she left, she says that she got a taxi and went back to the Chevron station where she got her car. Okay. That's what she said happened whenever she left the room in a panic. She went out, had the composure to hail a taxi and get back to the Chevron and go about her deal, even though her friend is in here allegedly seizing and can't breathe and is, clinging, for all she knows, he's dying while she's there. But here's the thing again, we have this little time gap. So the Rolls Royce wasn't there, right? But the keys were there. So could they have moved the Rolls Royce, taken it to be cleaned, copied the key, put the keys back at some point into the room? Which that makes sense. But just the fact that this Rolls Royce, this great big white Rolls Royce that is just as known as Buffalo Jim is, nobody can find it in this little Motel 6 parking lot that has no walls. It's basically a circle around it, like most hotel parking lots are. You drive around the building. There is no hidden areas.
Did they check that it had been hot wired? I mean, did they check for anything else? They didn't check for nothing. They just looked for. They didn't check for shit.
Yeah.
The family friend who went to pick it up, the PD called him and said, "Hey, it's here." Everybody must just missed it. But the dude, before he picked it up, the family friend, he said, "Don't you want to check it?" So they went through some cursory checks, They're like, yeah, it's good. There aren't even any fingerprints. Not even Buffalo Jim's and Lisa's.
And on behalf of the Las Vegas PD, either it was ineptitude on such a massive scale that it's ridiculous, or somebody was paid off. That's just.
I think this is my theory. I'm just gonna sum up what I think. I think that what it was that there was this couple of decades long feud between these two. Buffalo Jim started pushing the buttons and got too far in deep when he got involved with the FBI. That was the moment that that Ravioli or Rizzoli or whatever the fuck his name is decided he was gonna do whatever he was gonna do with him. He goes to jail for that. He's gonna make Buffalo Jim pay. He sets this whole thing up. That's why his room is open at 8:15, whatever it is, that 7 minutes before 8:15. He goes in, he checks in, he goes in the room. I'm in agreement with you. Somebody was in the room. Somebody got in the moment that he walked in. He goes down and they staged the entire thing to look like an overdose. Simple as that. Now, that's going to mean that it's a larger conspiracy circle, if you will, because I mean, somebody at the hotel has to be involved and somebody in the police department is going to have to be involved as well. Because if the car has disappeared, the car's being cleaned, and then all of a sudden, miraculously, the car is brought back and it has no fingerprints, somebody has to have a key or help get that car off the parking lot somehow to go get it clean. Now, whether that means that they drove it off or they loaded it on a trailer and took it somewhere and brought it back, that's another question to be asked.
What if they just unlocked it, left the keys there,
and you
pulled it on a trailer, and brought it back?
Yeah.
Then the other thing with how many people are involved is the fact that the crap about not looking into who Lisa is, about the cell phones, about the hair test, all of this other stuff that leads up all these questions. Those are higher up people. Those are people who are supposed to be investigating this thing. Why isn't this stuff being done? As Ryan said, it's complete incompetency, or somebody has been paid off. Those are the two things there.
You saw the list of
this man was
paid
killed
off by Rick Rizlo.
Yeah.
This man was killed. There's no question about it. How can we, as three people on a podcast, look at this from Texas and come to that conclusion in agreement within an hour and a half that we've been on the air, and it's been since 2008.
I've left stuff out, you guys. I've left stuff out.
There's no question about it. This man was killed.
Yeah,
Why are
absolutely.
they not reopening this case? That's the bigger question. Because I think when it starts coming out, it's going to be a can of worms that they don't want to open because they're going to have to answer way too many questions. That's going to show a lot more involvement than they're willing to show.
And how interesting. Rizlo
I'll step off.
Is a free man on April the 4th. And by the morning of April the 6th, Buffalo Jim is found dead. Not even 48 hours.
Do we know if Rizlo is still in charge of the Crazy Horse? Have you heard anything? Do you know anything about that?
So actually I had that and I took it out. So Rick Rizlo was re-indicted on charges and went back to jail for 2 years. He had to give up all of his stake and ownership in the Crazy Horse too. The Crazy Horse was then, they told him he had to sell everything. And I believe it was in 2017 that Rizlo got back out of jail, and he's now working in Nevada as some kind of like consultant, claiming to be indigent. But they tried to sell the Crazy Horse, and it was bought by a man named Galen, who ran the Bare Necessities strip clubs in California. Well, he wanted to just use the name Crazy Horse. Well, then they started throwing a fit, go, no, that's copyright, that's ours. Well, the judge looked at it, it says here in the paperwork he bought the name so he can use it. Well, it wouldn't take off. He was having problems. People weren't coming. And eventually he kind of abandoned the project, and the Crazy Horse 2 fell into disrepair. It was being being vandalized. Vagrants were sneaking into it to sleep. And there had been a series of fires there. I believe if it hasn't already been demolished, I believe it's set to be demolished.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So anyway.
Wow.
That is my story. That is my conclusion to this. But yes, thank you for this story, Shelley, because number one, Buffalo Jim has become my new favorite flippin' hero. Holy shit, what a life.
Remember how I told you that every time I talked to you on the phone, I was like, I love this guy. I hope that everybody that listens to this loves him as much as I do. There is just something about somebody with that kind of a personality that is that driven, that is that motivated to succeed, and doesn't want to hurt anybody in the process. Just from who showed up at his funeral, you had somebody from he raised money. He was a philanthropist. He did everything. And and there was nobody that was in anything that I read that was interviewed that went, he's a dick. Not one. They were like, man, this dude is a good dude. This dude would give you the shirt off his back. He would help you anytime you wanted. There was not one person that I found when people said, hey, what do you think of Jim Barrier? They were like, oh man, that dude is fun. He's crazy. Oh my God, I love him. Not one person who said he was an absolute asshole.
And he was a
Everyone
victim of
loved him.
circumstance. You know, he had his little business and they showed up at his doorstep, and then, you know, it ended up
But
costing him
let's
his
be
life.
honest. Let's be honest. He went through the hallway slanging his dick a little bit as well. I mean, you
Oh
know,
yeah,
so
it's
it's not.
cute, but
It's
he
not
doesn't go
like
back down.
it's not like he was just completely innocent in all of this. I mean,
True,
he kind of
but-
egged it on, but
Now wait a minute,
cost
he
him his
fought
life.
back.
well,
He fought back.
yeah, not egged it on. I'll take my words back on that. He did fight back. But there was a few times where it was kind of in a very mocking tone, you know, that it's like, here
It's
I am, come get,
hilarious.
you know. Oh,
That
it's
was some of
funny
the
as
most
shit.
creative fight back.
But
I
think-
know. I agree with all that. But I
I
think
think-
that's what got him in deeper and deeper and deeper. That's
I
the
think where
only
he-
issue about it.
I think where he fucked up is when he became a known Fed
Yes.
informant, and
Yeah.
he testified at the trial. That's when the target was on his back. Man,
Yeah, I agree. I absolutely agree. If you know anything about this case, go to unsolved.com. Help his daughters out. Don't
Do
be
it for the
afraid to come forward
Undertaker.
and say something. Do it for the
Oh,
Undertaker.
and that reminds me, Ryan, I had one story
Okay.
Oh shit.
that I left out. And
Okay.
And now I'm gonna tell you right now that this refers to when Buffalo Jim was a very young man in Sin City.
Uh-huh.
On his blog, Percy Pringle.
Oh, that's Paul Bearer. That's the Undertaker's man. Well, he's dead now, but Undertaker's old manager.
Okay. On his blog, Percy Pringle remembers how Buffalo Jim liked the ladies and loved to party. When I think of my favorite Buff story, I always recall one night with me, the Undertaker, and Buff. We were together at one of Las Vegas's top strip clubs. We must have been there for 5 or 6 hours when Buffalo went to the restroom. Taker, he calls him Taker instead of Undertaker.
Mhm.
Taker told me he couldn't take no more and he's going to sneak out and get a cab and go back to his old penthouse at the Imperial Palace. The fact that the Taker was leaving was a statement. We are talking about the Vegas party animal of the 1990s. Well, I was too nice to run out on him. And so, although he probably would have never known I was gone, I stayed. And I stayed for another hour. But then I ran out into the rising sun over Sin City the next time Buffalo hit the bathroom. It's one of those moments you just had to be there. And this was before his
Funny.
first child was born. So
Wow.
this was before he cleaned up.
Yeah. This
So
is his
I
party
just
phase.
thought that was but you know that he had cleaned all that up. That people would even say that he said that he was afraid that he did have a substance abuse problem in his younger days.
Mhm.
And when that first kid came along, they said he went straight stone cold sober, that he
Yeah.
was not going to mess up, that it was important now. And his friend Psycho, the guy called Psycho, and I can't remember
Mhm.
his everything. He said that he hung out with Jim a lot, that Jim was probably his best friend, and that he never once saw Jim drink or do a drug, that he stuck to his soda pops and his bottled water. But that he liked to go party. He wanted to go hang out and be part of the action, but he didn't drink and he didn't touch the drugs.
Yeah.
So the person who knows him the best, I don't know. So does the audience have any questions?
No, we just got a comment that says my 4-year-old could have solved this case, but anyways.
Yeah.
So
Rest in peace, Jim. I mean, rest in peace, dude.
what a fantastic freaking life and a fantastic story. I'm hoping that they'll reopen the case because I think it's bullshit that they won't, because there's way too much evidence here. I mean, this isn't a question anymore. There's just, you got to look at it, you know? I mean, just read the damn story or listen to it on our podcast. You know,
Right.
either one.
Or you can go and watch on Unsolved Mysteries, Death in a Vegas Motel.
Yeah. And if you even need even more unsolved crimes, we got one other one on here that's really good. It's called The Devil's Cover Up, Kelly Day Wilson.
There you go.
She kind of hopping right now. But anyways, whatever social media channel you are listening to, we are done, right? Are we wrapping?
Yes, we are.
Okay. I was like, I'm just gonna cut y'all off real quick. Whatever social media channel you're listening to is, we're not only on that social media channel. Make sure you go follow us across the board. We are on Facebook, TikTok, Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram. Shut up, Ryan. And anywhere that you get your podcasts on audio. So that would be Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts. So make sure you go follow us across the board. We got some wonderful stuff that's coming out for season 2. It's going to be exclusive to some platforms. Just search everything Vaguely Paranormal and look for the green sound wave. Shelly, take it away.
And if you want to know what we really talk about, because child, on here we behave, go and become a Patreon member. It's $5 a month. There aren't any tiers. For $5, you get our pre-broadcast, our post-broadcast, our Patreon, Paracon exclusive material. You also, if you're a Patreon member, you are entered into a drawing to come and be a member of an on-screen broadcast with us. If your name is drawn, you will then go into a secondary drawing, which puts you in the running to go on an exclusive Patreon only investigation where we provide the venue. You got to get yourself there. So if you'd like to become a Patreon member, check it out. It's $5 a month. And Ryan,
scroll in the link at the bottom
of the screen.
Yep.
And if you like what you hear, please tell 2 friends about us. Have them tell 2 friends. Please go on wherever you get your podcasts. Please rate and review. Give us 5 stars. And the higher we climb on the podcast charts on Apple Music, the more people can find out about us. Also Spotify. Also go to YouTube and hit the subscription bell so you can, anytime we go live or post anything new on YouTube, you'll know about it. And guys, do we want to tell them about a little trailer that dropped this week?
Oh yeah, we had a teaser trailer drop for Scare Network from ScareNetwork.tv. Over a new documentary that is going to be coming out in early 2023 over the Old Park Hotel. Now,
that features,
if y'all remember, we told y'all that we had some really breaking news that if you came into the investigation with us last October at the Old Park Hotel, that we would break it to y'all. Well, we're going to break it live right here. We are going to be featured in a second documentary over the Old Park Hotel. Our first one was over Yorktown Memorial Hospital. Both of these are going to be available. Well, Yorktown already is, but both of these will be available on ScareNetwork.tv. You can get that on anywhere that you download, from your Fire Stick, your Android store, Apple
Smart TVs.
Yeah, all of that stuff. Basically, wherever you get your apps, you can download it from. So go check those out. Those are a lot of fun. So it'll be our second documentary.
Like, share, and subscribe. So,
Absolutely.
Gentlemen, thank you so much. And thank you to everyone for tuning in to watch or listen to Everything Vaguely Paranormal. I'm Shelly Pruitt, my partners in paranormal, Mr. Blake Smith and Mr. Ryan Roberts. Thank you so much. And as always, we will see you next Tuesday.